Hello, welcome to Travel Photography. My name is John Gringo. I told a photographer friend of mine that I was going to be teaching a class on travel photography, and they asked me a question that kind of stopped me in my tracks. They said, "What do you teach in that class? Isn't travel photography just like everything else?" And I got to be honest, I felt a little offended because it was like they were attacking me in my class. And I was like, no, it's a really good class. I've based 30 years of traveling experience to hundreds of locations on all 7 continents. I've organized the material, got it all visually, wait a minute. And then I thought about what is travel photography? I'm out there shooting landscapes and scenics, do people shots, doing some street photography, and doing some action. And that is kind of just like regular photography. But it's different somehow. And the reason that I think it's different is all the limitations that you have. You have a limited amount of gear, a limited amount of time, and in general, a limited amount of resources that you can rely upon when you're out there traveling. You don't have the rental store and the camera repair shop and other places and people that can potentially help you out. And I know when I'm traveling, I kind of feel like I'm hanging out there on a limb, barely hanging on, trying to make do with what little time and equipment that I have. And I think if you want to be a good travel photographer, you need a few things. Number one, you need to be really smart about how you do everything, from where you go, how you plan your schedule, what you do on a daily basis. So you need to make really smart decisions about what you do. Secondly, you need to be organized and efficient about things, the way you pack your bag, scheduling the day, how you do things. You need to be organized. And third, which is my favorite of these, because I like intelligence and I like being efficient and stuff, but the third is fun, because it has saved my bacon so many times. And that is, you need to be creative, because you're going to be encountering unusual situations that you've never encountered before, and you don't have much to work with, but you can work with what you have. And if you're creative, you can solve a lot of these problems. And I love these problems because you really get to make these things up on the fly. Well, if I did this, it could work. And that's a lot of fun having out there. And so you might still be wondering, how much of a difference does it make between knowing what you're doing and just taking a really fun trip taking photos? Well, I think it's the difference between the pages of National Geographic and your friend's phone. You know your friend who just got back from a trip? They know you're into travel and photography. You got to look at my photos. Let me open it up here. And they hand you their phone. And now as you start going through the photos, you're thinking about, I wonder what the perfect swipe speed is. I want to get through these photos, but I don't want to offend my friend. And then you start making comments like, wow, look at that. Now that's something. And then my favorite one is, now that's a photograph. It's a big difference between the two. In fact, I want to tell you a little story. And this is about 2 photographers. They have some things in common. Number one, they got a decent camera. They got interchangeable lenses. They are enthusiastic photographers. They're ready to go out there and capture what they can. They're going to a far-off, exotic location that is just ripe for coming back with really interesting, good quality photographs. Now, the first photographer doesn't have a lot of experience in travel photography. They know how to work their camera, they know shutter speeds, apertures, composition, all that basic stuff. But they've not really done travel photography before. And they do what a lot of people do. They go on a trip and they see things and they're like, oh, that's kind of interesting, take a photo of that. And oh, that's new, I've never seen that. Take a photo of that, and they come home with a collection of photographs of things that they saw that they thought were interesting at the time. Now, the funny thing about photography is that just because you photograph something interesting doesn't mean it's an interesting or good photograph. It's a great place to start. Reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. I'll have a number of quotes in this class for you. And it's absolutely true. There are certain places, well, I like to use a military term here, target-rich environments. There are some places that are just really, really ripe for coming back with great photos. And that's a great start. But if you just document something that's interesting, there's a whole other set of photographic parameters that could make it a lot more interesting if you did things a little bit differently than just snapped a photo away. And so that first photographer came back with an album full of images, none of which were really all that great. Back to the story. the second photographer. The second photographer knew exactly what they were doing. In fact, when they scheduled the trip, they knew they wanted to get certain photos, so they planned the trip during a specific time so that they knew they could be in a particular place when a particular thing would happen. And each day they went out, they were thinking, how can I schedule my day so that I get better photographs in this or that situation? And every time they got into a situation where there's a potential for a good photograph, they worked the situation. They tried this, they saw it didn't work, they moved to do something else. They took a number of photographs, refining each photograph until they could get the best out of that possible situation. The second photographer came back with loads of really good images. And it's because, not that they were inherently a better photographer, it's because they were more experienced. But another way to talk about experience is knowledge. They knew what to do. They just knew how to do things better. And so you can have two people take similar trips and come back with completely different photos. Now, the thing about this story is that it's a true story. And normally we don't like to call out on air who these people are, but photographer number one is me. When I was 20 years old, I had just got my camera. I decided to pursue a career in photography. I was getting my degree in photojournalism, and I got an opportunity to go to the Soviet Union. This is when it was the Soviet Union, not Russia, and nobody I knew had been there. And for someone going into photojournalism, this was kind of like, this was my break point. You know, this is where I was going to break out and get some great photos. And I thought I got good photos at the time. And I'm going to share with you one of my favorite photos. And this is a terrible photo. And I hate to begin out a travel class on a terrible photo, but I want to show you what I was doing when I was starting photography. And so, yeah, there's an element I like. I like the little baby kind of taking that one step, the father watching him. But there's just a lot of dead space. I mean, it's technically correct. It's in focus. It's properly exposed. But that's not what makes a great photograph. It's the subjects and things that are going on in it. Now, the second photographer in this story is also me. And I hate to focus this all on me, but I have the rights to use my photos and nobody else's. So legally, it just makes it a lot easier to use. And the recent trip that I took was to Mongolia. And I wanted to choose a similar photo, kind of, street style scene. And we had gone through a market. It's not my favorite photograph from that trip, but it's one of my favorite because it's a nice moment in the market. I love the colors. I like the framing. I like the three characters. There's a short little story that I think this does a good job telling. And that's just because I knew how to work the situation and I took more than one photograph. And so, I think I've traveled a huge distance between Russia and Mongolia. Now, I know geographically that doesn't make a lot of sense, but we're talking photographically. I've changed a lot over the years. So I really think travel photography is a big challenge. And why it's always a challenge for me is because there's so many unknowns about what's going on, and every trip is different. When I say travel photography, a lot of you are probably thinking about your next potential trip, next trip that you're thinking about. And there are so many different styles of trips. Some of you are going to take cruises. Some of you might be on a bicycle tour. Some of you are going to be traveling with your family someplace. And so there's a lot of different ways to interpret what's going to be going on here. But I'm trying to design this class so that it can help anybody in any type of traveling situation. And now that I think about it, if you're good at travel photography, you're probably going to be good at all the other types of photography, because travel photography is forcing you to make do with so little. When you have the resources of being back at home and everything around you, I think a good travel photographer is just going to be a better photographer in everything else that they do. So what this class is all about is we're going to spend a lot of time on the approach and planning. We'll talk about some tools and, of course, different techniques. And all of this is in an effort to solve the photographic problems that you might have when you're out there. And of course, you don't have much to work with, so you're going to have to use what you have very, very well. I think success in travel photography, I like this, depends on your ability to innovate solutions to problems you've never encountered. And I hope this is the type of challenge that excites you, because you're fully capable of solving this, because there are many, many different avenues to solving photographic problems. And so this is what should get you going. There's going to be something new. And back when I was younger, I would think, I'm going on a great trip. I hope I come back with some great photos. And now when I go on a trip, I go, I know I'm going to come back with great photos. I don't know what they are, and I don't know how I'm going to get them, but that's part of the fun. So this class will be broken up into 4 major sections. We're going to talk first about the approach and planning of the trip, just to get you set off with everything in the right place. We'll talk a little bit about gear and technique. I'll warn you right now, for anybody who is really interested in gear type stuff, we're going to go pretty light on the gear in here, because frankly, if you can lift the camera in your hand and it has a battery so you don't have to stay plugged into the wall, it's probably good for travel photography. It just depends on what you want to do. The second half of the class is where we get really into deep solving probleming on shooting in different locations and details and how to interpret things. And then the final section, people, wildlife, and events. And I want to ask the audience a question. I want to show hands here. How many people feel a little intimidated about taking people photographs when they're traveling? Kind of don't feel real comfortable going up to strangers? Well, I definitely feel that way. I've always felt that way. I feel that way now. And so I'm going to talk about a lot of different techniques for getting people photographs for shy people. It's great if you're outgoing, and I've worked with Kenna in a number of situations traveling, and Kenna is just the most outgoing, friendly person who'll just walk up to anybody. And I've learned from her in many cases, because it helps to talk to people. And even if you're kind of shy, I like photography because it has encouraged me to go up and talk to people that I would never have talked, and I've had some fantastic experiences because of that. All right, this first section on approach, I feel like I'm still needing to state my case for travel photography. I know that I'm preaching to the choir here, both in the studio and at home, but I still want to tell you why I love travel photography before we get too far into this. So I think travel photography is really photography at its best. Photography can be used for so many different things, but showing what a location looks like is something just, I don't know, it cuts right to the core of what are these other places that are these wonderful places around the world like. It gives you a feel for the backdrop of life of a particular location. You can share significant elements of a culture. You can show just quiet moments on a street. You can show the struggle of places. You get to show the people of a land. And this is all outward focusing. You can turn the camera around on yourself and you can focus on your own journeys. I've taken a number of bicycle and other adventure type journeys where I wanted to tell the story of riding my bike around Iceland. I wanted to let people see this adventure through my eyes. I wanted to take them on my journey. I wanted to show them the dangers and the ruggedness in certain areas. And in all these cases, every once in a while, there's a photo that just perfectly captures what you're seeing and hearing and feeling in a particular photograph. And I think that's just no better way to come home from a trip, is to have a photograph that is like that. But I do have to admit that travel photography is difficult. There's a lot of things that are challenging about it, and let me confront one of them right up front. It is expensive. This is not a great hobby for somebody short on money. The camera equipment, the airplanes, the motels, rental cars, all that sort of stuff can cost a lot of money. And the places that I am very fascinated with are islands. Australia, yeah, I know it's a continent, but it's an island. It's Iceland, Madagascar. Target-rich environments, as I talked about before, some really good places. And so I love going to islands because they're very unique like that. But those plane flights are more expensive than everything else. Another good quote for you here. I don't completely agree with this. I think it should say travel and education in there. But I think both of those things will make you a better person. It can be really hard work. That's if you really want to put the time into it. And this is, completely up to you. You can be on your next trip to Disneyland and you say, I just want to take one picture in front of the castle. That's it. And there's other people who want to go much, much deeper into it, which is usually where I am, the deep end of the pool in travel photography. One of my trips, I was doing a canoe trip up in Canada, and I was trying to tell the story of me and my buddy going down the river. Well, you can't just have a picture of your buddy all the time. You need two of you in the boat. Well, how do you get a shot like this? Well, you got to dock the boat. You got to put your camera up on a tripod. You set up an intervalometer. You synchronize it with your watch. You go back upstream. You come back down the river, perfectly synchronized with when the camera is going to fire so that you can get this shot. It takes about a half an hour of running around and hoping that you got everything right. And that just took a lot of work. In Egypt, the picture was simple to take. You just press the button. Getting here was a whole nother issue, getting permission to get into this area. I had 3 different people in the car besides me so that I could get there. And there's a lot of things that make it difficult to get certain shots. You need time to photograph. I always fear that person who says, yeah, I got this great trip planned. We're going to Europe. We're going to see 8 different countries in 6 days. It's never going to work. I was in Rome, the Vatican, and I found this stairway. I go, this is a great stairway. It needs people. I will wait here till some good-looking people come along. You'd be surprised at how many ugly people there are. Well, you know, they're not ugly, but they, you know, they got 4 or 5 of them. Some are going up, some are coming down. The guy's 4 steps ahead of the girl. It just doesn't look right on camera. And so I wait. I wait about an hour to find a nice-looking couple going up or down the staircase. I have a running background, as some of you know, and so I'm more than fine if you say, that's a 5-mile walk. That's great. We're going to find all sorts of photos along the 5-mile walk. I'm going to save you the stories of my hiking, biking, canoe adventures where I'm doing all sorts of ridiculous things. I'm talking about standard stuff. We'll go to one of the most popular places for travel destination, Budapest. I wanted to go out and shoot a bunch of stuff, and I don't know if you have those step things on your phone or, you know, Fitbits or something like that. I recorded over 44,000 steps in one day because I got up before it got bright out because I wanted to be out there during the sunrise, and I just wanted to walk because that's the best way of finding stuff, is just walking around because you can stop, turn around, and shoot. 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm catching first light on the church. By noon, I'm climbing the bell tower looking down on the surrounding buildings. 2 p.m., I'm walking around on the cobblestone streets. At 9 p.m., I'm catching some night lights on the Parliament building. And yeah, I'm stopping for lunch and taking breaks and things like that, but you can do a lot of walking in one day if you're not doing anything else, and it just helps to be in shape. Be fit for the trip that you're going to take. Now, I know there's some old fogies like me out there that might be lamenting about, well, it's not what it used to be because now everybody's traveling. There's so many people. There's travel destinations are so crowded. The world has changed quite a bit, all right? And I'm going to reach back a little bit just to show you how much it has changed. Think about transportation for a moment. If you want to go from New York to Rome, that's $800. I went back into the records to try to find what this would actually cost. Back in 1950, it would have been $3,000 in today's dollars. Think about what that would do with all the air flights if they all quadrupled in price, all right? So they are dirt cheap in some ways for traveling on the airplane. Think about staying in communication with your business or your family, your friends back home. You can call pretty much any place for like $1 with the right calling card these days. Back in 1950, just to call from New York to LA, it was about 40 of current dollars to talk for 5 minutes. I know some of you are old enough. Are you on a long distance call? You get that from your, how long have you been on that call? 7 minutes? You better hang up soon. It's just dirt cheap now. Think about once you have your camera equipment, how much does it cost to take the photos on the trip? They're not quite free yet, but the memory cards are very, very cheap. Back in the days where you had to buy film and get it developed, you could easily spend $1,000 on shooting photos. And now we don't even think about it. Oh, I'm just going to go shoot, I don't know, 5,000, 10,000 photos, and it won't cost me an extra dollar because I'm just reusing all that digital stuff. And so this, I was just thinking, you know, I forgot a slide. What is the population of the world done between 1950 and now? I don't know, it's probably doubled, maybe, I don't know if it's tripled, but it's at least doubled in that time, and there's all these more people going out there. And so every place you go is going to have more people on it. And we'll talk just a wee bit about selling photographs and the demand for travel photography. This class is not about the business of travel photography, but we'll touch on that as we go throughout this class. I think there are numerous talents to a good travel photographer. First thing is I think it helps a lot if you're a good traveler. Now, we all know that there are people who are better at traveling than other people, and so these are some of the characteristics that I think are important for anyone who wants to travel. And every once in a while, I'll run across somebody who says, yeah, but I'm not that patient. And I feel like going into dad mode and just saying, well, you better get some patience because you're going to need it. And so if you don't already totally embrace these characteristics, just kind of put it on a back burner. This is something I want to get better at. I want to try to do this better because when you're out traveling, you want to feel comfortable and relaxed about what you're doing. If you're not going to be shooting the best photos you can. If you're going to be a travel photographer, you also need to be good, as we said, in a variety of different types of photography. Now, some of you are people picture takers, and others are landscape photographers or street photographers. And I think to be a good travel photographer, you kind of just embrace the whole smorgasbord. You get to do a little bit of everything. And, you know, you probably haven't seen a class here at Creative Live on portrait photography with John Gringo. I would like to teach one someday, you know? It's not my best thing, I don't think, but when I do get that opportunity to take portraits when I'm traveling, I like that because I'm getting better at something that I want to improve on. And so, you know, if you're taking classes, if you're trying to improve, just think, okay, which one of these things am I not that good at? Do I not have that much experience? And I'm going to go out and I'm going to work and I'm going to try to get better at that so that when I go on my next trip, I'm more skilled at doing that particular style of photography. So there's a lot of reasons that make travel photography difficult in many different ways. Yet, there are so many people who want to do it. It's amazing. I think if there was a questionnaire when you graduated from high school, and forget the current job world that we had, if you could just choose any job in the world, I think travel photographer would probably be second most popular on the list. I think first most popular would be rock star. You know, I think everybody wants to be a rock star. But I think typically when people get a little bit older, for the most part, once they hit 30 or 40, they're like, okay, maybe the rock star I don't need, but I like the travel photographer. And that's because you know when you go out doing this is going to lead to some of the most memorable and rewarding experiences of your life. And that has definitely been the case with me. A few photos of times when I was out traveling and there was just really special moments. And photography changes a little bit because it really pushes you to find these peak moments. It really encourages you to go up and interact with people you may not interact with. You get to immortalize those quiet moments walking those small streets. It impacts the way that you see the world. And so travel is obviously going to lead you to new perspectives. That's just what travel does. But by pursuing photography, it's going to make what you do more interesting, more unique, and more permanent. And so I think traveling with a camera is a fantastic thing to do. And it makes the whole experience better, at least for me. And I think it can do that for a lot of other people. So in this class, I've had to decide a lot of things about what we're going to talk about, because this could be probably about a 5-day class. And we're going to have to keep it tight to keep it into this single time frame that we do have. And so I'll warn you right now, I'm not going to help you out with Photoshop. We talk about Lightroom for maybe 1 or 2 slides. I'm not really into drones. They're fantastic. I love the video you get from them. Legally speaking, traveling with them, it's a nightmare. It's a whole other thing on drones. I love watching video, but this class is not about shooting video. We're not doing the business of photography, although we'll talk just a little bit about it here and there. And so we're gonna stay on topic with travel photography here. As many of you know, I do teach a number of other classes here at Creative Live. And so some other classes that might be good to go along with this is my Fundamentals of Photography, which is just about photography. The equipment guide will be a little bit on the thin side, and so there is a free class called Camera Buyer's Guide, which will help you figure out which cameras are best for different types of things, and I do have my picks for my favorite travel cameras in there. And then there's using your lenses, and then I have, wow, it is over 60 different classes on how to use different cameras. And when I say that 60 different classes, it makes me feel that my life has gone awry somehow if that's what I have done. But if you want to know how to use your camera, there's plenty of these classes out there. Now, where does this class come from? It comes from me and my experiences and kind of my opinions. As I say, I've got to travel to hundreds of different locations all around the world. Here's kind of a collection of them. But I think what's also helped is I have traveled in many, many different ways. I have been on large cruise ships, medium-sized cruise ships, small-sized cruise ships. That should cover it, right? Oh, no, I've been on yachts, canoes, kayaks, water skis. Well, actually, no, that was just last weekend. Hiking, biking, canoes. I already said canoes. Hiking, biking. Let's see what else. I've been on road trips alone, road trips with friends. I've worked on a travel TV show. I've traveled for work. I've traveled with my family. And so pretty much every scenario that you might possibly find yourself traveling in, there's a pretty good chance that I too have traveled in that mode. And photography takes a different position in every one of those trips. And it's up to you to decide how much of this you need to incorporate into your next trip. Now, I know that some of you are saying, John, you are talking way too much. Give us some information. So let's go with some quick travel tips. So let's go top 10 quick travel tips. Number one, just staying lightweight. Try not to carry too much. Weight is the enemy. Yes, you're going to need to read the guidebooks to figure out where the major attractions are, but it's always finding your own little nooks and crannies is where you're going to end up with some of your most special photographs. Be happy. What I mean by number 7 here is that you don't want to be eating during the beautiful sunsets. Earlier or later is better. Save those good times for out shooting photographs. You're going to be traveling to some different locations, and you know, there's all about making the world a better place, but there's a time and place for doing those sorts of things. And so there's a lot of different styles out there. Sometimes I recommend going really light, like leave the camera bag at home, just take your camera in one lens. But do bring a battery, a memory card, and a cleaning cloth, just because things happen while you're out there, and those are the ones that you can easily carry with you. I no longer take photo advice very seriously when it comes to where to go. And I have had too many good, fantastic photos happen in places that I was not expecting, that I am very open to almost any place. In fact, I went to a garbage dump in Cairo, Egypt. That was fantastic. Everything takes longer when you don't know what you're doing and you don't know where you're going. Think about how efficient it is that most of you can travel from home to work. You know the routes, you know which lights, you know what streets to take. Now take someone from another country, put them at your home, tell them to get to where your work is, and see how long it takes them. And so that's what happens to us when we're traveling. You know, you just can't shoot good pictures when you're hopping around. And so just utilize every bathroom opportunity you can. And number 1, if you're not feeling good, you're not going to be shooting photos. And so there's a lot of things that we'll talk a little bit about here, but you got to be feeling pumped up when you're out there and feeling good and positive about what you're doing, because then you're going to be able to focus your energy on your shooting photos. So I think these are good, quick travel tips. We may not talk about these. We'll talk about a few of them later on, but I think they're a good way to just kind of kick off the way that I like to think about travel photography. All right, let's talk about planning your photograph. Are you planning your trips with photography in mind? One of the most important things, I think, is setting expectations. I lead photo tours, and at the beginning of the trip, one of the most important things is the first gathering of everybody together to let them know kind of here's what to expect on a daily basis. And whether you're traveling by yourself or your friends, setting yourself up knowing what's going in. You know, if somebody ends up sleeping on an uncomfortable mattress. Oh, that was horrible. The mattress was terrible. All this complaining. But if you go in knowing you're probably going to have to sleep on the ground, there probably won't be anything. Oh, there was a mattress. It was kind of lumpy, but it was better than sleeping on the ground. It's all about your expectations. And so when you look at photos, my photos or anybody's photos, you're going to think, oh, that's what it's like. And then you're going to realize there's a behind-the-scenes look about what's really going on. And so, yes, lots of people there. Oh, beautiful location. And you go around the corner, oh, there's a tacky gift shop right next to it. And then it's like, the photo looked really good, but when I was there, it didn't look nearly as nice. You weren't there at the right time of year, the right season, it was under construction, or who knows what's going on when you happen to show up. Oh, a beautiful location right in the middle of nature and all these other photographers where there's not even room to set up my tripod. And so there is a distinction between these perfect photographs that you see on Instagram and other people posting on Facebook and any place else online in the guidebooks and so forth. There is kind of a behind the scenes of, it's a little different world out there. The first thing I think about as I'm getting ready for a new trip is, okay, what's the mode? What's the style that we're going to be doing here? And this is going to determine how much gear I can bring, how it's packed, how often I'm going to be able to stop and shoot photos, what types of photos those might be. Am I going to be on a group tour bus where I can't tell the bus driver to stop, or will I be with one friend and a driver that I can say stop anytime? Those things make a big difference as to what I'm going to expect to get out of any particular trip. So think carefully about what that exactly means for you. If I'm on a ship, okay, there's two types of photo. There's photos on the ship and photos off the ship. What can I shoot on the ship? What sort of lenses do I need? What am I going to do when I get off of the ship? This is very important. What are your priorities when you are taking this photo trip that you are going to do? And a lot of people are traveling because we want to have nice travel experiences. We want to have nice memories from it. If you want relaxation, that might be a little bit harder to incorporate photography in a heavy sense. Just to let you know my personality, my worst vacation ever would be a trip to Hawaii to sit on the beach and read a book. Sitting on a beach is fine, reading a book is fine. I don't need to go to Hawaii to do that. Hawaii is a beautiful place. I would much rather go for a hike and look at some of the beautiful nature, or walk down the beach and photograph the beach there. And do you want to take great photos? Well, yes, of course we do. Well, how much time and effort do you really want to put in to shooting great photos? And I'm not here to tell you that this is how you have to dedicate your trips, because we all have different style trips. And sometimes photography is very low on the totem pole of priorities. But during that one little time, you can do things that make it really worth your while. Now, one of the things down here is you can sell your photos. Yes, you can travel, you can sell your photos. There are people that buy travel photos because not everyone's there with a camera and taking photos. And so let me just speak for a moment about professional travel photography. Professional travel photography is heavily regulated by supply and demand. And if you want to refer back to the earlier section about how many people are traveling and how much easier it is to shoot photos now, add that to the internet and you will see that there is a fire hose of supply right now. And so the demand for travel photographs is generally kind of low right now. I know people who are selling images online or trying to sell them in person, and it's just like everybody's doing this now. It feels like everybody is a travel photographer. And so officially, I don't recommend you quit your job and try to become a travel photographer selling your images on stock. It's a very, very low probability of success. It's not zero, but it is very, very low. Generally, this is just me thinking, right now in our culture, a cheap price will beat quality. Somebody working at some company says, you know what, we need a picture of the pyramids. Here's one for $1, here's one for $100. One for $100 is a bit better. Well, let's just get the one for $1. And people are willing to take free or cheap now over really high quality in most cases. There are always exceptions to these rules. If you do want to do this, and I'm not even an expert, so I don't know why I'm giving you my suggestions here, but in my experienced opinion, if you want to do this, I think working on packaged products is the way to go. So having a picture of the pyramids, not that valuable. having a picture of the pyramids in all seasons, having a pictures of Egypt and Cairo and a whole story, so it's a package of products, a collection, that's more unusual than a one-off nice shot. And so if you can put your pictures into a package of some sort, and you can make any sort of story or package you want, I think it's going to hold more value than a single one-off interesting image in most cases. Planning your next trip. Very important figuring out here. Who are you traveling with, and what sort of relationship do you have with these people? Are they on board with this whole photography thing you're into? And so I have seen some husband and wife teams where one person's into photography, the other person isn't, and sometimes they go off in their own separate directions and they come back and they're perfectly fine. Sometimes the second person kind of gets into it after a while, or maybe they're both into it. It can be really tough. I took a family trip. This was kind of like a family reunion trip. We went to Hawaii, great place. And I'm just thinking, oh gosh, mom, dad, brother, sister, and we're going to rent a car and they want to go here and there. When am I going to get in good photography? Well, I found out something very interesting about my family. They all sleep in till about 10 o'clock in the morning. That's when John takes the rental car out at 6 o'clock in the morning to go shoot sunrise. My brother and sister like to go for a hike. They want to go for the hike to go for the hike. I like the hike too, but at the top of the hike is this great bamboo forest. And so I'm hiking the whole way going, I get 10 minutes of photography at the top. I get 10 minutes of photography at the top. I get my 10 minutes. They get their hike in. I get my photos in. Everybody's happy. And so you have to kind of figure out how can you get a little bit of what you want without ruffling everybody else's feathers on it. And I know that can be challenging when you're traveling with friends and family that are not interested, but it can be done. You just have to taper back your expectations. Setting a realistic agenda is very important, and a lot of this comes down to what I talked about earlier, scheduling enough time. Because if you say photography, 5 minutes, that's not enough time to be creative and to deal with the problems that you typically have when you're out shooting photographs. But just, be aware of the physical requirements. Oh, I wanted to go all the way up to the top of the hill, but I didn't realize it was that far. These are the types of things where research will really pay off. Last fall, I went over to my nephew's wedding in Europe. And I knew that during the wedding days, there was like a whole several days of things going on. I was going to have to taper way back what I'm doing. I got in like an hour of photography in the morning where I could go out, shoot some photographs of the places we were at, and then I'd come back and do the family stuff. And I'd take my own family photos, which are not going to be in here. And so, understanding how much time you have and when you can squeeze those things in is very important. A lot of times we are traveling purely to travel, and we're just trying to take photos to document the trip. Sometimes we're taking photos because that's what we want the trip to be. But in some cases, photography can be a lot of work, and it might take away from the rest of your trip. And so you need to figure out where it sits in. I learned this lesson on my bicycle trip around Iceland. That's me and my buddy there, and we've got camp set up, and I was keeping a very detailed journal of the travels because we were trying to document our story and what we felt and what we did each day. And towards the end of the trip, I just started to get weighed down by the journal writing because I was writing like 6-8 pages a day, and this was taking 2.5 hours, and I'm like, do I really want to be spending 2.5 hours in Iceland writing in a notebook? And I had to taper that back to a level of, I'm going to do 1 page a day. And so for a lot of travels, I just did 1 page a day because I don't want to spend my whole time doing it. And those of you out there might feel that way about photography. It's important, but you don't want it to run amok of everything else in your travel. So I'm going to try to do 3 good photographs a day, or I'm going to do photography on this one day, but I'm just going to leave the camera behind on another day. And that's perfectly fine in my opinion, because you need to keep yourself in a happy place, a positive state of mind. What are you trying to do? So a lot of times people are trying to document their trip. I'm going to show you what my trip was to X location. And so that's when you're going to focus on you. We want to see pictures of you in different places, and that's kind of be the parameters of what you do in something like that. Maybe you're really interested in a location. you're going to be going to a city that you love, maybe New Orleans. I love New Orleans, and I'm going to photograph this district and this famous building and that street, and then you're going to be focusing on that particular location. So you need to brush up on that location and all the different places that you want to go. You might be trying to tell some other separate story of something that's going on, maybe a personal project that you're doing. And so that's going to change the direction of what you want to do. Selling stock, you know, that professional travel photography, well, then you're kind of at the whims of whatever's popular. I remember back in 2008, leading up to it, I heard about photographers who were going around shooting the number 8. Because in Japan, number 8 is really popular, and so they would take photos of number 8 on the street sign and the billboard and every place they could find an 8 written. So that can lead you to kind of some weird photos there. Sometimes I just want to take great photos. I don't care what they are of, I don't care what story they tell, I just want them to be a great story in and of themselves. And that's going to lead you and change your direction about where you go. Some key tips for setting the schedule on your trip. Fewer locations, more time. One of my first big trips was going to Iceland. Island, one country, 6 weeks, that'll do it. That's my type of really good vacation, a lot of time in one place. Think about how many people in your group. Generally, the smaller numbers gives you more freedom and accessibility, less people you have to wait to go to the bathroom and all those other things. Now, I did say health and safety is your #1 priority, but I do say here, maximize travel time, rest when you get home. I do tend to push things a little bit hard. I've been called the Energizer Bunny more than once in my life because no, this is not the morning for sleeping in. I have a chance to go out and shoot something that I'll never be able to shoot again maybe in my life. I want to get out there and do it. And so I do push myself a little bit. You just can't push yourself too far. If you have signed up on a trip, your buddy, your friend, your partner has decided to design for you. We're going to New York City and I got it all planned out. Ah, that's great. I don't have to do any planning. But boy, are they going to plan for your photography time in there? You need to go, hey, what are we doing here? What are we doing there? Hey, can I insert this little thing here while you're doing that? And you need to get involved in that itinerary if you can. And I talked about this before, moving those dinner times, breakfast times, to times where it's not the best light. Now, the exception to that rule, actually, Ken and I were leading a tour in Morocco, and we were trying to figure things out. We had to have dinner kind of at a certain time. So he says, well, if we're going to have dinner at this time, at sunset, let's do it on the balcony of a roof where we can shoot photos from the dinner table. And we got some great photos doing that. And so that's an exception to the rule. There's lots of exceptions to the rules. Here's a good formula for you. This is the only formula in the class, I think. Time is greater than money. Yes, I know there's some exceptions to this. But a lot of time when we're scheduling our trips, we're thinking money, because as I said before, travel is expensive. And I've gone through this before. Let's see, I can get a hotel right in the middle of town, but it's pretty expensive. Or I can go way out of town and get a really cheap hotel. And then you find out that it's going to take you an hour of commuting to get into town. You're going to have to spend money, and then by the time you get to the middle of town, it'll be a wasted an hour in and a wasted hour out, and then you're already going to be tired from that experience just commuting back and forth. And so think about where do you actually want to be and try to get right there, which is why I'm more than willing to sleep in a tent if it puts me right at the base of where I want to go. A motel room an hour back, wow, I could sleep in an hour if I'm willing to sleep in a tent. And so whatever gets me closest to the action is usually what I'm picking. Think about the day and the quality of light. We get a sunrise and we get a sunset every day, and those tend to be really good times where the light is not as contrasty. It's good for landscapes, it's good for people shots. There's just a lot of good stuff going on in these photography times. And so when you are scheduling things with your friends and planning out your trip, yeah, we'll take care of that other stuff. You want to go to the museum? Yeah, let's do that at 11 o'clock in the morning. You know, we can spend the hot hours of the day, bright sun right in there, and then 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, we'll come back outside where we have some beautiful photography action. And so this is going to lead me to when I get up, what time I eat breakfast. A lot of times I have found that the traditional 3 meals a day doesn't work for me. I need to have a quick snack before I go out, go shoot sunrise, come back, have a proper breakfast, have a late lunch, and then maybe have a late dinner after everything's all done. It varies according to the type of trip and where you are. But you want to be out there at these best lighting times, because that's just going to make your photos better in most cases. Can't stress this enough about time, giving yourself enough time. Just plan to arrive early for everything. Traffic, I was in Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar, the worst traffic ever. It took us like an hour to go a half mile, and it was just crazy. And so make sure you give yourself plenty of time. The other thing to think about on time is, what do you have control of versus what do you not have control of? And there's a lot of times that we travel where a good amount of our time is not controlled by us. It is uncontrolled. I'm on a tour and I'm going there when the bus gets on, but I have that little bit of time when the bus gets off, and really trying to maximize this time that you have control here. Now, as much as I've been talking about planning, which I think is very important, I love not planning. I love having the luxury of not planning every once in a while. I have gone on road trips where I said, I've got the car packed up, I'm pretty sure I know the 3 states I'm going to go to, but I don't know the order, and I don't know how long I'm going to be in any particular location. But those trips can or cannot work out well depending on the type of environment that you are in. And so I started thinking about, when do you plan? When do you just wander? Just go unscheduled, because you'll hear both types of advice. And it's that they work in different locations. Iconic locations, you know, at something event. If you said, I want to go to New York City to photograph Times Square on New Year's Eve, you don't just wander around on that one. You come up with a plan. Where's your hotel? When do you make the reservation? How am I getting here? How am I getting there? You got to get everything in place. If you are trying to get a very specific image, I want to get the firefall in Yosemite National Park. That happens over this short window of time frame. You got to make a lot. You just don't go down there and wing it on something like that. If you have a rich environment, a place where there's a lot of different things that you can do, that way if something is all tied up or not working, you can move on to something else. It mostly requires more time. But I prefer just wandering. I prefer not having a schedule. And it's driving me absolutely nuts right now that the national parks in the United States are going to a reservation system on their campgrounds. And so they only have a few that are available day of. And so you have to start planning in those cases, because they're just too popular. And so I encourage you to try to do a mix of both of these, because they're going to lead to different types of successful photographs. So you've got your trip all planned. Make sure everyone knows what's going on, know what the schedule is. Have you checked the weather? You got all the right clothes for it? Know what to expect, know what everyone else is to expect. And a fifth one, what are you going to do with all your photos? I'm going to talk about this more at the very end of the class, but this is an important thing to know. Are these just going to go on a hard drive and sit there forever? Am I going to print them? Am I going to put them together into a story? Am I going to make a slideshow for my friends? I know on my first big trip to Iceland, I knew I wanted to take a lot of photos. I knew I wanted to document the journey, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with the photos. I ended up making this 45-minute Ken Burns styled documentary. And I realized after making it, I missed so many shots because I didn't know what I was doing with them. So the next time I did that picture, we were taking pictures that normally I would never, like I'd take a picture of my pedal and my foot and my hand. Why do I need that? Because when I'm telling the story, that comes up in the story, and I need that visual little photograph. It's not a great photo, but it helps tell the story of what you're trying to do. And so if you are trying to tell a bigger story, you need to start acting like a Hollywood movie director. You might need to start storyboarding. Okay, well, I've got this element. Well, how do I get from this element to this? Oh, I need this element here. I wouldn't have thought to go shoot a photo of the front door of my hotel room, but now I know I need that shot. And so when you know more about what you're doing with your photos, that's going to give you a whole shot list of things that you're going to need. Any good trip needs a little bit of research. You can start with all of your standard travel guides. These are going to be perfectly fine. They're going to tell you the hotels and the popular destinations. They are not particularly good in advising what a photographer is interested in doing. There are a few photography guides out there that will help tell you what the best time is to be at a particular place or how busy it is. But that's a good place to start off with. One of the things I will do is I will look on, do an internet search for any particular location, and then I go on and I want to look at the images. And I want to see what other people have shot in a particular location. And I'm not looking to copy what they did, but I'm trying to see what the realm of possibilities of where I can go and what I can create while I'm there. And so there's a number of great places. You can go on to Google or Bing, you can go on to Flickr, and then from here, you can start making your shot list. Hey, I like these concepts. And if you haven't traveled a lot, let me just tell you something that will just shock the heck out of you. Wi-Fi is not available everywhere you go, okay? I know we're so used to it. Is the signal a little low here? Let's go over here. There are places that you are far and away from any sort of internet connection, and it has thrown the current population off a little bit. Oh, I'll just Google that. Oh, my phone doesn't work. And it's nice to have this information either in a notebook or on your laptop or on your iPad or your phone where, oh, you know, you can get to this one corner. Where is this? And you can like show the security guy, where is this picture taken from? And like, oh no, you go around the outside over there and that's where you get to it. And so having this with you in the field can be very beneficial in some cases. All right, let's talk a little bit about travel gear. And so I'm trying not to talk too much about just general. There's a travel class that has nothing to do about photography, about traveling efficiently and safely and getting the cheap airline flights and cheap hotels, and we're not going to get into that. I am going to touch on a few of things that I have come to learn over my 30 years experience that are just like, that is the perfect item. Every once in a while, they finally come along. So ideally, think about everything that you have. It would fall into these three categories. Because as I said, weight is the enemy, all right? And so think about everything. The toothpaste, how much are you really bringing? You know, if you run out of toothpaste, I ran out of toothpaste in Mongolia. Oh my God, you know what? In Mongolia, they sell toothpaste. And so, you know, not a big deal that I ran out of toothpaste. And so just bring what you need. Bags of bags. My buddy and I were packing for one of our trips. We put everything together and we went, we're overweight. We got to figure out where this is. And he was going through my stuff and he's going, John, you've got bags of bags of bags. You know, you got your toothbrush in a little bag that goes in your toiletry bag, which is covered in another bag, which goes in your overnight bag, which is in your bigger bag. It's like, well, how many bags are you bringing versus the actual stuff you need? And so there needs to be a balance on all of this. When you go look at luggage, these really nice travel bags with the rollers and stuff, they can weigh over 10 pounds. That's more than 20% of what you're allowed on most airplanes. And, you know, if you're going to Las Vegas on a business convention and you got lots of flat, hard surfaces to roll it, totally understandable. That's exactly what I use. But on some cases, I'll just use a duffel because they're super lightweight. They can be crammed into smaller spaces. They can be reduced if I'm not using them. And I can put more weight in them. Now, granted, I got to carry it around, but it depends on the type of trip that you're taking. One of my worst fears is leaving home, having forgotten something really important back at home, right? Don't we all fear that? And that's why I am dutifully working over a checklist. And so I have a checklist for every trip, and I go back to the previous trip and I see what I took there, and then I try to remember what worked out and what didn't work out. And so if you want to make your own checklist, these are the four main categories: clothes, health, technology, and photography. And then I have subgroupings in there of the types of things that I need to bring in there. And if you think about it ahead of time, and you're pretty strict about not just throwing in a bunch of stuff at the last minute, you can travel with just what you need. Now, the other type of trip is a road trip where I might be camping out. Then there ends up being a whole camping category, and if I'm doing my own lunches and dinners and things like that, there's another category in there where you get all that. But I've made like an Excel spreadsheet where I can just add all this up, put it out a couple weeks ahead of time. Oh yeah, I want to take this one thing, put it on there. And then when you're on the trip, you kind of have a nice little manifest of everything that you have with you in case something should go missing or you're trying to wonder, did I bring this or not? Just so that you're well thought out and planned for these things. Think about the total number of items you bring, because I think on any particular trip that you travel, you are constantly thinking, okay, I got my toothbrush, my toothpaste, my underwear, my pants, my shorts, my swimsuit, I got this, I got my wide lens, telephoto lens, and you're trying to like keep track of your 150 different items. And that just gets harder when it's 250 and 350 items that you're bringing. Just can you reduce the number of items, because things get lost, and that's how you waste time. And I talked about this at the beginning of class. Being efficient and organized. Bring only what you need. So there's a lot of different apps, and we could probably do a whole class on different travel apps. Here are a few quick ones that I really like. Instagram for sharing your photos. I got my photos at @John_Gringo, so you can check me out there. There's a couple of great ones for celestial navigation, so if you want to find out where the stars are, what time does the sun come up, where is it on the horizon, which is really good. One of my favorite by far is Maps.me. Maps.me is fantastic because I love maps, and this is the digital map that you don't need to be online with. And so I usually don't activate my phone when I'm traveling. So when I was in Mongolia, I downloaded the Maps.me when I had Wi-Fi access with my phone, and then when I was offline in Mongolia, my phone picked up my GPS coordinates and showed me exactly where I was. And I can find restaurants and all sorts of things. It's a little out of date because it's not live right now, and there could have been a restaurant that closed down last week that it's not keeping track of, but it does a very good job. Google Translate, that's kind of freaky, but it's fun because you point it at something and it starts changing it to English, and sometimes it gets it right and sometimes it doesn't, but it's getting better. The currency one, and finally, Visited, not useful at all, but kind of fun because you get to point to all the countries that you've been to, and you get to count up all the places you've been, and then you can kind of indicate all the places that you want to go to. And it tells you how much of the world you've traveled to and how much you have yet to travel. And so that was just kind of a fun log of where you've been on there. And as I have this up and I see some of the students in the class scribbling things down, there is a PDF that comes with this class that has all of my top 10 lists and all of these types of lists. And so this comes with the purchase of the class. And so don't feel like you need to mark all this stuff down, because this will be part of the supplied materials when you purchase the class. All right, so when you're thinking about what type of clothing, obviously environmental protection, whether it's sun or cold. Culturally appropriate, where are you going? We all know that there are certain places that require head covers, or they don't allow shorts, or you can't have short sleeves. Be aware of those things so that you're not caught off guard. And I'm sorry, you can't come in because you're not dressed right for this particular venue. You want maximum versatility. I think women are great at this. They're like, well, this will go with this, or it'll go with this, or go with that. And they can mix and match everything, it seems like. But you want things that can be used for going out for a walk, going out for dinner, being used for multiple different things. Of course, you want it lightweight and packable. Easy to wash. Nice to be able to do that out in the field so that you can have clean clothes. And so I will never bring a pair of blue jeans with me. They're just way too heavy and hard to dry and heavy and bulky and stuff. And so there's much better things than that. And something else to consider is the color. And this is for different types of reasons. And so I took a trip with my buddy. We rode our bikes across Alaska. And we wore these black fleece coats, which is kind of like a black hole in photography. And we came home and there's no information there. You know, dark coats, they did not look good. So on the next trip, which was a road trip down to the south, we went to Walmart and just purchased some $5 cheap, colorful tees with no graphics on them. And we just wanted some nice, bright, happy colors because we were shooting photographs of each other. And so if you're photographing pictures of each other, you probably don't want graphic shirts that have a bunch of text and type and pictures on. Just simple colors are nice, and they're timeless as well. Other times you want to blend in to the environment that you're going to. You don't want to stand out. So you don't want to be the person there in the gigantic red Gore-Tex coat. You want something that's subdued and blends in and doesn't draw any attention to what you're doing. And so just figure out what's important for the type of trip that you're going to do and bring the right clothes for that. Okay, we're going to go through some fun stuff now. This is just general stuff. This is not photography stuff, but this is stuff that I think it's important for anyone traveling be aware of. And I don't know that I'm recommending this stuff. I'm saying this has worked really well for me. Number one thing is you need to have a rock-solid alarm clock in the morning. Phones are really good because they're really loud alarms, and I like that. Because when you want to wake up at 4:30 because that is that special bus going to the sunrise shoot you want to get into, you don't want to miss that bus. And so you need something that you are absolutely positive will wake you up in the morning. I'm still a little bit traditional. I still like taking notes on traditional notebooks. And these Moleskine ones are really nice because they stay together for quite some time. I don't bring all these Ziploc bags, but Ziploc bags can be just very handy for putting your toothbrush and toothpaste. Something if you're going river rafting, you need to bring an extra memory card. You want to make sure it doesn't get wet. And so just a few extra of these bags can be very handy. A lot of photographers know about gaffer tape, not duct tape because it doesn't have the sticky residue. But a big roll of it is really cumbersome and hard to pack. So what I do is I tear it off and I have it all in this little flat bundle here. Now the fact of the matter is the last 10 inches I can't use, but everything else is small and super easy. You can pack something like that almost anywhere. You don't need to bring 17 pairs of pants. You can bring 3, and if they get a hole or rip a button on one of them, be able to fix it. And so just a little small sewing kit has saved my butt literally on some trips. Okay, this I'm going to say is definitively the dumbest slide that I have ever put in any class I have ever presented. But it's here for a reason. I have dealt with crappy travel toothbrushes for my entire life. The ones that kind of fall apart and the bristles are like, did these come from 1950? They just don't work very well. I got this one from my dentist, and it folded out. It had a comfortable hand grip on it. It stayed open, lock solid. It closed right. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. And then I went online, and they were like $1.50 a piece. And I bought a 6-pack. So I got them for life now, I think. This, another kind of one of those dumb things. I have been struggling with one thing or the other. And if you think, what's wrong with just a hat? Well, the problem is as a photographer, we're holding cameras up to our head, and that means the hat has to come off, or it's got to have a really soft bill to it. And if it's a really soft bill, it's kind of falling down in your face, and it doesn't look right. And this is the first hat I found that has just the right amount of stiffness, so that it kind of stays out there, protects your head in front of the sun, but you can cram your camera up against it, and it doesn't ruin the hat as well. And so it's just perfect mix there. Okay, this one's for my folks over 40 out there, okay? Need a little bit of help reading the small print on the map and stuff. Glasses break because they're awkwardly shaped. These things are flat. They look a little goofy, but they're a great emergency backup pair. If you barely might need them, they're lightweight, they're small, they're practically crush-proof because they're flat. They work really well. I talked about bags and bags, but the lightweight bags, these packing cubes, are really nice because when I'm looking for pants, I'm looking for a big blue bag. When I'm looking for shirts, I'm looking for a big orange bag. And I have different types of stuff in each bag. And so when I go into my stuff, I don't spend a lot of time shuffling around my stuff. My stuff stays organized as things are all in the bag. And so something like this, I didn't really buy until not that long ago because it just seemed like that's a lot of money to spend on a bag. I'll just use a grocery bag or something. But these are compressible, so they can help compress your stuff so you can get your stuff in a smaller space. I like this brand, but I think just sandals in general are really nice because when you're out shooting photos, as I said, the best way to shoot photos is just a lot of walking around. Your feet get tired, and it's really nice to breathe with some sandals. And there are many places where sandals are totally fine for going out to dinner, and they just feel good after wearing kind of shoes and walking around all day long. I am not very much of a fashion-conscious fashionista. And to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of cargo pants, the way they look, and cutoff pants. But you know what? They are so practical. It is so nice when it gets to be 90 degrees and I zip off those pants and everybody else looks at me like, oh, I'd like to wear shorts right now. I'm like, I'm fine. They look a little goofy, but you know what? They're keeping me comfortable. They're making me feel good in that regard. Plane flights, motel rooms, campsites. We can't close our ears like we can our eyes. And so earplugs, I don't always use them, but they are lifesavers when they're needed. This was a bit of a splurge for me a while back, but I have ended up doing so much traveling that when I'm riding on the airplane, I ride with noise-canceling headphones, and I found that the higher the noise level, the greater the stress level that you have. And 17 hours of kind of a high stress level is not a great way to begin your trip out. And so I bought a pair of these. They're kind of expensive, and now I've found that as I've started to record video and audio, they work as audio monitoring. And so now multi-purpose, and so they are, they're more useful to me now. But as I say, it's not necessarily for everyone. You can just use earplugs, but it is a nice thing to have on the airplanes. I like doing a little bit of laundry. I know places will do it for you at times. Sometimes they don't do it quick enough, or they want to charge too much that I don't want to pay, or maybe it's just not available and I want to wash clothes. And as I was young growing up, I learned the experience that a lot of you have already learned, which is bar soap in the bathroom does not do a very good job at cleaning clothes compared to a little bit of powdered detergent. And while it might arise a little bit of suspicion, this white powder in a jar that I am bringing, I've always been able to get through security, and I've never had a problem with that. The neck gaiter here is just a multi-purpose type of headwear, neckwear. I've used it as a face mask in the desert. I've used it as a hat when I didn't have a hat. It keeps my neck warm, keeps air from flowing down in a coat. I've used it in hot environments, cold environments, and it's not the worst lens cleaning cloth ever. All right, and so it serves multiple purposes, which is what we like on the items we bring. Obviously, you can't bring something like this on the airplane with you because it's got a knife, so you'd have to check it. But having a little multi-tool for doing a variety of little fix-it things has been very, very helpful out on the road. A headlamp is good, and I'm very particular. It is this brand, this model of headlamp that is good because of two reasons. Number one, it's got this metal cable system, and it's spring-loaded, so when you're not using it, it is really compact. It is about the most compact light you'll get. But if you've ever tried to do something with two hands, assemble a tent, look for your clothes, having one hand on the flashlight and using the other hand isn't nearly as good as having two hands available. So the headlamp is very, very valuable in that. The other thing that's really nice about this is that it has a very bright white light, but it also has a red light. And so anyone who's interested in shooting nighttime photography, the bright light is going to throw off your night vision, and the red light is going to enable you to keep your night vision when you're out there shooting. And so these are some of my favorite items. Now, a few other things that I bring with me on a daily basis in the camera bag besides camera equipment: toilet paper. This is because I'm traveling in interesting locations that may not have toilet paper. Hand sanitizer is a good one to have, a little bit of gaffer tape, sunscreen, lip balm, and then an energy bar. You don't know when you're going to miss your next meal. And so these are things that I would have in my camera bag that fit in a fairly small pack. So we're going to take a look at some of these items I just talked about real quickly because I want to show you what they actually look like and some of the benefits to them. So let's start right here with the big old hat. And so the idea with this company, it comes with like a 4-page instruction manual. And they sell it in just tiny little increments, so make sure it fits your head right. It uses this because they say it's better to use a string than to have your hat fit too tight all the time. And so when I'm shooting photos and I have to get this up here, I know that the hat can move out of the way pretty easily and then flips back into place nice and quick. The light here has a red light, hold it, has a nice bright white light, and that's super small, and then it's got this spring-loaded so I can wear it. Now, if I was climbing a big mountain, I wouldn't want this because it puts a little bit of pressure on your head here, so it's not something I would wear for 3 or 4 hours, but for 5 minutes, it's perfectly fine. The notebooks right here are really nice. I like it because you can take a pen and put it right on top like this, and so that's your whole package right there, which I think is very convenient. I talked about the gaffer tape. So this is what the gaffer tape looks like once I've flattened it up, and if I need it, I just pull off a strip, and there's all sorts of reasons why a little bit of gaffer tape might be handy for different things, and so that weighs next to nothing right there. The buff here can be used in many, many different ways. I'm not going to put it on right now, but you can make it into a hat, and I like it probably most for cold weather, for stopping the air that's going down the front of your coat right here. It feels really nice, and these just feel really soft and comfy. And so, as I say, not the worst thing in the world for cleaning a lens with. These cubes here are expandable, and they're compressionable. So you can expand them if you have more stuff, and then once you got stuff in them, you do the one zipper, and it gets it all down to a lower size. And so I have no two that are exactly the same color and the same size. So if I pick up the small orange one, I know exactly what is in this one. And that's just about staying efficient, staying organized, and how quickly can you go up, take a shower, get ready for dinner? Can you do that in 15 minutes? Can you do it in 10 minutes? And so part of that helps you do that out. Talked about bringing the Ziploc bags. If you ever get these really small ones, they're nice to have sometimes for memory cards or other little things you have. And here is the toothbrush, folks. This thing is amazing. Folds out, and then this locks it in and gives a nice firm grip on it. And I know it's stupid, but you know, if you want to shoot photos like John Gringo, this is how I brush my teeth.
This is you at your job. You've been working here for 2 years, and no one's even noticed the work you've been doing. Finally, a miracle occurs, and the VP of your department is standing right next to you. What do you say? What do you do? You start to go around and around in your head about all the things you should say to impress him, and right as you're about to talk, he's gone. Next time, you'd better be ready. Check out our class, The Art of Networking, at creativelive.com.
All right, let's talk a little bit about your health and safety for the trip. First off, if you are going to be traveling abroad, it's probably a good idea to go to a travel medicine clinic. It's a special type of clinic. Some clinics specialize in this, and they deal with where are you going and what sort of shots do you need. And the first time I was going on a trip, I was working for the travel TV show, and I was going to a whole lot of places, and I needed 9 shots in one sitting. So I set the record at the University of Washington for the most shots in one sitting, and I survived. Some of you have special medications. Some of you might need a doctor's note. You might need to pick up medications in a foreign country, and that involves things that I'm not real familiar with, but I know you need to have the right paperwork to have all of that in there. And have a list of medications listed with you of anything that's important that you have. You might want to give copies to people that you are traveling with as well. As I mentioned before, your health and safety is your top priority, and that has changed the way that I travel. You know, before, when I was 16 years old, I would just bound across the boulders to get across the river. And then as I got a little bit older and my bounding ability slowed down a little bit, and then when I carried $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 worth of camera on my back, I started going much more slowly. Or I started to walk upstream to go to where there's a bridge across the river. And so you just take less risks. You're like, you know, that's kind of a sketchy part of town. Okay, not going to go over there. I'm going to go over here. So there's a lot of ways that that manifests itself. Traveling with a partner is great, especially somebody who is kind of on cue with what you are doing, but they can watch your back. It helps out. Know where you're going. Have those maps. That Maps.me app can help there. But you know, what can you expect there? And that last one on there was have communication options. So think about if you need to communicate with your hotel. Are you carrying the hotel card for where you're staying so that you can tell the taxi or the Uber driver where your hotel is? How are you going to call home if you need to? Kind of have all those planned. Best rest you can. What I mean by this is don't spend all night looking at your photos from the previous day. You know, I know we'll talk about downloading and editing, but you do not want to stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning editing last night's photos unless there's something critical you need to have them done for the next day. Shut her down, get your rest. We all have certain limitations. Sometimes they're more serious than others. Sometimes, well, that just doesn't agree with my body too well. And this is all just being a little bit more preventative. You know, I don't always do well with that type of food, so avoid it. This is not the time to be risking things. Minimize all your risks in every way that you can think of and have backup plans. What are we going to do if our driver doesn't meet us here? Oh, well, we can take the train back this direction. And so always be thinking about how to solve these problems that might come up. So you might be also wondering, well, where can I shoot photographs when I'm traveling? And of course, this greatly depends on where you are going and what the local rules are. But as a general sense, what I can say is that it's going to be allowed in places where the public is allowed, on the streets and sidewalks and markets and parks and things like that. You might need permission if you're going to a private event, you know, a concert or a play. They may not allow photography there. And kind of a cop-out here, but it just varies so much around the world as to what's allowed and what's not. There's a lot of countries that don't want you taking pictures of bridges and the military installation or even the police. And so just be aware of those things depending on the type of place that you are going. One of the restrictions that I think you all need to really be concerned about, first off, okay, there's no flash photography, so let's know how to turn the flash off on our cameras. A lot of times there's no tripods, but the one that I've been running into more and more lately, and this might be more of a European type thing or museum type